Welcome everybody. This week at Built to Scale, we have the future of work. Where are we both? Every week it changes, and this week is very special. A new VC record. The more buying of talent instead of hiring. Talking to the walls is now real, finally, for me. Google search gets a voice makeover. Why Combinator AI startup school takeaways. Are cheaters now winning? The robot rundown, the human edition, and finally a big one, Australia. An abundant country of energy, resources, intelligence, and innovation, or a backwater has-been of bureaucracy, regulation, and high taxes? How's that sound, Matty?
That's a docket. That's packed. I'm pumped to get into it, Scotty.
Well, straight off the top, we found you in Austin. We found you in Vegas. I've seen you in a Cremorne office. I've never seen this. Where are you? Is this a podcast first?
I think it might be. Mate, I've got the sand between my toes up in sunny Noosa, and I'm currently sitting on a beach as the sun comes up. So I think it might be a podcast first. My hips may give way. I'm not used to sitting like this. Used to having my standing desk. So if you notice my camera go off for a bit, that's why. But yeah, quick vacation before we move the family to the US. It has been a little bit chaos up here. My son decided to turn himself into a little lizard boy yesterday by banging his chin on the bench and splitting his tongue about a centimetre wide. So that was the chaos that ensued as we figured out whether to send him to hospital or not. Benefits of having a brother who's starting to be a pediatric doctor. So apparently it's going to heal just fine. But that was a bit frightening. But anyway, so Noosa hasn't been quite as relaxing as I would have liked. Where do we find you?
Well, first of all, just so people know, I mean, having a podcast from Noosa Beach. Noosa, if for people who don't know, is the northern part of Australia. It's this great north-facing, when you're in the southern hemisphere, beach. That's a bit of an inlet, so it's actually an amazingly long and deep beach, like north facing, so it's good in the winter or summer. And the sort of the peaks around the area break the surf, and it's a great place to actually have children just running on the beach. So it's become like a hot spot for anyone with young family to go on a holiday.
Totally.
So I'm very envious of you. But yeah, having your baby chop their mouth in half is not probably the ideal start. There are plenty of lizards in Noosa, so
well, I was literally sitting there.
Pez.
I was sitting there on my computer at doing a bit of research for today, figuring out what we're going to talk about. And I had my AirPods in with the noise cancelling on, and I was just in the zone. And all of a sudden, my wife comes over, holding my son out in front, and just blood everywhere. And it was just like, what the hell is going on? I initially thought that he lost all his teeth because there was so much blood in there. We didn't even know it was happening. But yeah, it's little lizard boy is just joining all of the other lizards up here.
Oh wow, poor fella. Well, mate, we've moved offices from South Melbourne to SoftBank, so not an extraordinary move. But the existing office space is this sort of McLaren orange, which is very reflective of the B2S pod color palette. So don't be surprised. People have probably seen the brass W in the background previously. But don't be surprised if there's a little B2S neon or something going on by the next time we're on the show, and maybe some even acoustics. So looking to level up my look, by no means do I have my feet in the sand on the beach, but by next week, just let's see if I can get a bit of a sign together. So in the new office for me, and as you can see, the revival of the pendant is still here and strong. So it's made it through another week. I haven't bolted the AirTag onto it. I've just been very careful with it. And give us the
update on the Limitless pendant. Yeah, what's it? Is it useful?
So full week of use now, and I've gone through every situation. So I've built some rules around it myself, because I would say I'm the only person I know with one. And I've got to go into all these different environments and have different people experience it and me with it on. And I've built some rules. So one is I take it off as soon as I get home. So it's getting no home interactions involved, especially after it accused me of being mean to my dog Hank. So I've taken that off the table. in the work environment, it's proved really useful. At the end of each day, because it's been taking notes of what you've been saying all day, and it doesn't really care who the other person is. The other thing I'm noticing is it's picking up what's going on through my phone. So if I'm listening to a pod, it's actually somehow making its way through the pendant. So then you've got to get it to just like say concentrate on what I've gone through, or you can actually ask it like from what you've heard, what are my takeaways relevant to me. But one of the really cool things, it's got a unique set of questions that are well prompted that you can use at the end of each day. And one of them is like, what have I done well today, or what could I have improved on? Where was I at my best? Where was I at my worst? What did I commit to completing tomorrow? What do I need to make sure goes into my task management software? So they're doing really well at making those lifts automated so that all you're doing is one button press, because it'll prompt you like, do you want to know your takeaways from the day? And I'm finding it's almost like they're going for this assistant sort of, assistant on your collar type thing. But then also there's almost like this AI coach. I've been given some feedback that's pretty consistent with the feedback I get from human beings at around review time. So the fact that it knows nothing about me apart from a few interactions, and then within a couple of days of just listening to how I operate, it's giving me similar feedback to what I'm getting from staff and things, and from people around me. It's they're getting at something there.
That's awesome. And the fact that this Limitless pendant is picking up the podcast, is that because you've got them on speaker, or is it connected in with your phone? It's tapping into the phone sound itself.
Good question. My gut feel is it's on speaker, because what happened was yesterday I thought I had a pretty a day that was pretty focused on work, but I'd listened to a Sam Harris podcast on the Iran and Israel situation, and we do our best not to bring up these kind of things. But then it started wrapping up this like Iranian Israeli thing, and I'm like, hold on, I haven't even talked about that all day. And then I realized that I'd listened to 20 minutes of a podcast while I was eating lunch. So I think it's picking up on the microphone. It'd be interesting to see if it comes through and picks up anything else. But yeah, what's I think is coming up is a lot of people are asking me, what is that? Traditionally at the end of a long meeting. And, I'm saying, look, it's my note taker. It's the equivalent of me taking notes. It doesn't care who you are. And I haven't had a bad response to that at work in front of me. So they might have gone away and then said, oh, that's a bit weird. Got to be careful what you say around Scott. But I haven't had any weird response around me. But in theory, and I'm not the most politically correct person in the workplace. Definitely not like, I wouldn't be CEO of ANZ or anything. But I'm sort of all on the record all day. And I'm happy to be on the record all day between work hours, because I feel like you sort of have been anyway, like with employment laws and things. So, I think in the workplace it's appropriate. I'm not taking it to, I didn't take it to lunch at Francois on Saturday afternoon, but with a group of lads. But it brings up this conversation around wearables, AI in general. And what are your thoughts on that? And then this almost like optimization movement and just data capture in general.
Yeah. Look, I'm actually getting sick of my Apple Watch. I've turned all the notifications off. I don't like the fact I need to charge it every night. The only reason I use it now is for when I'm going for a run and I can listen to music or a podcast without having to take my phone. It connects with my AirPods, which I like. But I was actually thinking that the device that I now want is I want a nice looking analog watch. Don't care what brand it is, whether it looks like a Rolex or whatever it looks like. I'm not a watch guy, but I just want a nice metal watch that looks good, that has a couple of features in it. It has the Limitless pendant note taker in it, built into the watch. And it's got the health data tracking as well. Even though I don't immediately use that health data, I want to keep it there. I want to know if I've got changes to my resting heart rate, and who knows, this data in a few years could be really useful to have. So that's what I think the device of the future needs to be, is a nice looking watch or whatever it might be that's got taste, that's got style, but does the really important things that you need, that you can interact with AI, it can take notes for you, tracks all of your health data. And it would be cool, to your point around, when is it on, when is it off? Just having like a visual indicator on there to say, is it recording at the moment? or is it off? Like, let's say you do want to step into a one-on-one with someone, they really want to open up about something personal at work. It could be a good way to go, note taker off. Like, this is completely off the record. Even I can't, even though it's my own personal note taker, it doesn't know who you are. You can speak openly to me right now. So that's the device I want. What's your opinion on wearables and where they're headed?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny the journeys that we all go on. It's like food FOMO at a restaurant. You always want what you're not doing. So I got an Apple Watch, well, 5 years ago, had it for 18 months and loved it for like going on runs and not taking my phone. That was like the ultimate freedom, I felt like. And then exited a business, got a little bit ahead of myself, got a Rolex, which you sort of have to do when you exit. And and then sort of since have enjoyed wearing. I was never a watch guy, but this thing came up, and it's like one of those things, a Rolly, that if it comes up and you don't take it, you get in like the blacklist section because they're never available, right? You can't just go up and buy one in a store. So it's like, oh, I better take it. It's an allocation, like a free business class flight or something. So did that, and then I've just had this sort of like Apple Watch FOMO of not having that data there. So I've been thinking about going back to the Apple Watch, and I'm having also this, as you know, this like going from this collar wearing physical builder to this sort of more technology data driven business owner. So I've been wondering, like, is it what should I be doing? But what's interesting is I think what you're talking about, it sort of sounds like something Johnny Ive might get into with OpenAI potentially, like something tasteful that captures the data that you want without giving you a million notifications. It sort of sounds like an analog Apple Watch with notifications turned off that looks a bit more classical. So who knows? Johnny Ive might save you, and maybe he'll bring us together and find us a happy medium. But also, there's probably, I think, two scenarios as well. Similar thing. I'm thinking maybe Apple Watch during the workday, and then a nice watch if you want to wear it out or something like that. So who knows? We'll wait for some product guru to save us from ourselves.
Well, hopefully we can feature Johnny on a thanks for watching in the future. So when he brings out his Rolex looking AI note taker with health tracking capabilities, we can claim it.
It does sound like a some sort of brand building exercise, doesn't it? So we want to be Rolex and OpenAI and Apple in one. But in general, it brings up the optimization movement. A lot of people might listen to Andrew Huberman or follow the fella that's trying to live forever, the Do Not Die guy. And I think especially men are, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s are thinking about living longer, optimizing themselves, tracking their health, and trying to like perfect everything in life. Am I sleeping exactly 8 hours? Am I getting sun for 30 minutes in the morning? Well, you are. You've taken it to the extreme on the podcast now. But also like, what am I tracking? How's my heart rate variability? And we're becoming this really like, so something to turn in on ourselves to try and optimize everything. And I've just seen this week the first signs of some people almost going the other way, optimization. How about we live our lives? If we want to eat something that's not good for us, we can. If we want to have a drink, we can. I don't need a dashboard of all my internal mechanisms at the end of every day. I want to relax and spend some time with my family. So where do you sit on this optimization scale at the moment?
Yeah, look, I'm heading in that direction as well, the de-optimization. I was never a massive nerd about it, but I always had the latest gadgets. For me, I want to get the background data. I do want to know my health metrics being captured if I need them, but I don't want a app telling me what my sleep score was. I don't want fucking some technology to say that I had a shitty sleep last night and that I should hate myself and I need to go and do better. Like,
By the
I
way,
mean,
you're
I
gonna have
know,
a shit day as well. Just in
yeah,
case
yeah,
you're
you're gonna have
thinking positively.
in case you woke up on the right side of the bed, you're gonna have a terrible day because you only scored a 42 out of 100 on your sleep score. Like, I don't need that in my life. I think we need to listen to our body's indicators, and also just like do reasonable things. Like, whatever happened to just eating a balanced diet? Like, why do we all need to be on keto or be vegan, or meat's terrible for you, or you need to eat more calcium? Like, why can't we just eat a balanced diet and be normal humans? So this whole don't die movement, I think, is going to go a little bit out of fashion. I think they're going to figure out that there's only so much that you can actually optimize there. And do you really want to live a life of doing all of these optimizations that take up 20% of your day just to live 20% longer, to live from, instead of dying at 90, you get another 20 years, 110. Like, I don't know if that's what we need as a society, without getting too deep about it. But I mean, I'm not that age either, so it's hard to say. But in general, I think we're going to move back to collect the background data, just like you do with an AI note taker. It sits there in the background. It can call out things. Like, I do love the idea of doing regular blood tests to pick up on early indicators of things that could really be screwing you over in the future. And the same thing, if my Apple Watch or whatever it is picks up a change in my heart rate, that means that I've actually got some condition that I need to be aware of, then that's great. But I don't want to optimize my life around it. That's so I'm sort of with you on that movement.
Yeah, look, sometimes when you get caught up in the day-to-day news, like, microplastics are killing you, and you're eating a credit card a week. So don't use a plastic bottle, use a glass bottle. And in the last 7 days, it's come out that glass has 5 times more plastic in it than plastic. So I think if you're constantly reacting to news and the next thing, if you change the flag on your X and Insta profile to like the new thing every 2 weeks about the new country that's in trouble, you're going to look silly. And then sometimes there's some ancient wisdom in there that you can, that's lasted for thousands of years, and how humans have worked, like evolutionary biology, and then slowly probably some your more ancient sort of type stuff as well. But I think if you, like you said, are you calorie deficient, or are you having more calories than you're using? That's how you're going to gain and lose weight. Are you having protein, fats, and carbs in a diet? I'm not a diet guy, but just in general, I think what you're saying, there's balance over the weekly fad and this month's new bit of data you can take in. Yeah,
Totally.
I think I join you there. I'm probably slightly out of balance. Look, there's probably too much wine going into my system, if I'm perfectly honest.
Hey,
But
everyone's got their vices. Wine isn't the worst.
that's right. And in this, on this pod, we do talk about the present a bit and what we're both going through, but we also like to have an eye to the future. So I just want to know what you're thinking about in terms of the future of work. And I thought we'd have a chat about just some of the different behaviors we're seeing now and some of the skills that we're seeing stand out at the moment.
Yeah, so something that actually prompted my thoughts on the future of work, something I've been thinking about, but that I thought summed it up in a really funny way, was this meme I saw of this like rowing boat, and they've got the cox at the front who's standing on the boat, and he's like dancing as they're rowing. And the comment was how I feel after launching 5 instances of Claude Code, which is one of those AI programmers. And it really resonated with me, because when I am using a bunch of AI to do deep work for me, and I'm kind of just commanding them, you do feel on top of the world. It's like, I've got all of this power, and I'm doing all these things, and I'm able to like do stuff in between. And it just made me think about the fact that there's been a little bit of a movement recently towards saying that we need to do more deep work. We need more focus time, because we've got so much distraction around us. And while I think that is true for some use cases, I think a lot of what work is going to become is actually having to become better multitaskers, because going and doing deep work yourself, I think, is not only going to be a fraction of what we do, because a lot of the deep work will actually just be handed off to AI agents. So you still want to be creative, but I think solving those hard problems, you're going to have to think about, what AI agent should I be using, going off and kicking off jobs for them to do, and then analyzing as it comes up. So I actually think that it's maybe a bit of a hot take that humans need to become better at multitasking, at managing a bunch of different AI agents, at being able to switch context between them. And then when we have to go down and deep to analyze it, having the capability to do that, and not just having this 10-second attention span that TikTok has created. So we do need both, but I think where I think the future of work is going personally is this ability to be across many different things. I think that's where humans will really shine, being able to have, not necessarily be an expert in heaps of areas, but being dangerous in a lot of them, and just having a lot of knowledge about the world and knowing how to use AI to your advantage. And in the work day, I think the general work day for a lot of, especially white collar workers, is going to be just commanding a bunch of software to do stuff for you, which shouldn't seem so far-fetched. It's kind of like what we do anyway. We used to use calculators. Now we've got spreadsheets that do it for us. But it's going to take that to a whole new level. And it did make me think around, like, what is going to be a new interface for managing AI? I don't think that a laptop and, a ChatGPT interface is the best form. You've got a bunch of tabs on the left, different threads, and you've got to kind of like remember which ones to check, and they can notify you when the work is done. But what does a new interface of work look like when we're commanding a bunch of AI agents? I think is a really interesting problem to tackle. So for me, future of work is back to this orchestrator. Humans are the orchestrators of different AI agents. And, don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it's an interesting problem to be worked on, is what is the interface for interacting with AI? What is the new interface for the future of work?
Yeah, I can lean into that. So I might have spoken about it on this show before, but so it's the conductor of the orchestra, right? Or the conductor of the choir. And the conductor is a generalist. The conductor knows about most instruments and knows, is usually classically trained, and brings all these different instruments or tools together, or people, right? And when I was at Oxford, for a couple of weeks doing a leadership course, I suppose the best experience I've had in learning was spending a day with an amazing European conductor from Oxford who conducted the choir, and we all got a chance to conduct this choir. And what was amazing in terms of leadership and management skills, it was all the same. Were you connecting? Were you giving specific instructions that were easily followable? And did you have a general understanding of what the different parts did to sort of make the overall machine work? Which is an amazing experience to sort of think, okay, and what the funny thing was is the feedback, once again, that I got from the choir was the same feedback I get at work. Is that, you just went off by yourself, you thought you knew what you were doing, and you were really hard to follow, and you moved a bit fast, and it was really interesting to have a choir tell me this. Now I'm getting, this telling me this and then that. So I think you really are that conductor, and I think the future interface is similar to the Minority Report, where you bring that conductor in, and that Tom Cruise movie, and you're basically sort of dealing with like a hologram or projection style, and you're moving your hands around, but it's completely augmented reality, across you in your zone. So at the moment, I'm sitting in my office. Will probably be pretty hard for you on a beach. That sounds like 10 to 15 years away, getting that interface working. But in an office environment, potentially being able to just move things around with your hands and talk. So voice and hand movement, similar to a conductor, feels to me like the way you're going to be able to manage this chaos of agents. But what's interesting to me is that the original way of being an agentic person at work, so being able to deliver outcomes and being a good manager, all of those instincts remain with digital workforce. So can you set clear goals? Can you set tasks? Can you meet deadlines? Can you explain project milestones? And, can you deliver a deliverable? It doesn't matter whether you used a human workforce to do that or a digital workforce to do that. The other one on a side note that I think is interesting is I just think gamers have got a future here. The skills that you get, we've got a couple of guys in here that were gamers all their life, and they're really, really good at like whipping through Excel and financials and things, just because they're used to just seeing quick moving parts on screens. And I often just bring them into meetings for me to drive the presentation or drive the spreadsheet or drive the software, because I know what I'm good at. I can talk about anything to do in construction. And if I've got a driver that's been a gamer before, where it's like, that's the feeling I get. You know how you had the guy on front of the boat, the rowers? That's the feeling I get, is when I've got like someone driving the presentation for me that's a gamer and I can talk.
Yeah, well, but to your point, it's this new blend between humans and AI. Like in that case, it's a human who's within your business that's helping drive things, or it could be an AI. It's just this blended workforce of both. And look, I do find it, Scotty, I find it funny, Scotty, that you got that feedback from a choir. Like when you get feedback at work, you can take it or leave it. But when you're getting feedback from a choir, that's you really listen. That's serious.
Especially over dinner in a 800-year-old church at Oxford. When the choir
Yeah,
leader
yeah.
sits down next to
That's
you and the conductor
yeah,
and says, "This is how you could improve as a leader," and you're like, "Okay, I'll take down those notes."
yeah, that's quite
All right,
sobering.
enough about my leadership flaws. Let's get into some AI news, which is why we're actually here. And I want you to talk to us about thinking machines.
Yeah, thinking machines or the thinking machines lab. I don't know heaps about it, and I don't think many people do. So what I do know is that the thinking machines just closed the largest ever seed round. So when you think of capital raising, you might have a pre-seed round, which is kind of like pre any product, then a seed round, when you're still really early. They've raised $2 billion at a $10 billion valuation, and we don't know what they do yet. So the mission is to develop AI systems that are more understandable, customizable, and generally capable. The reason that they've gotten this massive, massive valuation without a product yet is because of the people. So there's a team of approximately 30 researchers and engineers from leading AI organizations, mainly from OpenAI, a bit of Meta, a bit of Mistral, and led by the ex-CTO Murati of OpenAI. So this is A16Z, a very big VC, and some others, essentially saying, making a huge, huge bet on the future of AI and saying we are happy to pay this ridiculous valuation for a company that has no product yet, just for the people that are going to be leading it. So very fascinating. I think it's like a watch this space. And a bit of what you've been talking about on this show, Scotty, the talent war, and that's really what is commanding these high valuations in these AI companies, is the people who are leading them.
Yeah, so we're seeing the buying of talent as opposed to the hiring. And then we're seeing another thing, which I think Richard Branson has this amazing quote that says, teach people enough so that they could leave and be successful, and teach them even more so they only want to be successful with you. Something along those lines. I might have butchered it. And what they've clearly been able to do at OpenAI is keep a group of talent together for a long time, from like 2016 through to the last 18 months, under the guise of a non-for-profit, and build this unbelievable bit of technology and then a product experience. And they're way ahead. What they haven't been able to do is they've lost every single person of substance except for Sam. And he's obviously recruited hundreds or thousands more, maybe, in terms of young AI engineers that have been spurred on to join him. But all the leadership, if you look at their old photos of the 4 or 5 of them, they've all gone. And they've all gone to separate places worth billions now. So it's the first time I think we've seen that. Usually you see, Bill Gates at Microsoft and his team sort of stuck together, especially with the valuations that OpenAI are getting. You would think that, the team would want to stay, but they've all been plucked away one by one. So that's an interesting watch. But what's going to be interesting is how powerful is the technology? So, your Ilya Sketsova and things like that, and Mira Murati. And how powerful has Sam's leadership been? And what I think we've seen to date is that Sam's leadership is extremely powerful because they're still ahead of everyone. And he's backing that with the existing technology and throwing in some new engineers, they can keep stoking the fire. And we'll see if sometimes from the outside, you overestimate how good some of the other leaders or some of the other staff in a competitor's business are. We saw it at my previous business, where people would hire people thinking that they've got some superstar, and we're like, oh my God, without our systems and our guidance, you've just hired just something that we could plug straight back in, and you might be thinking you're getting some agentic superstar. So it'll be interesting to see if these people who have left, gone and got multi-billion-dollar valuations, whether they can deliver on what these investors think they're getting.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And the other thing is, you think about the leading companies at the moment. As you mentioned, OpenAI was founded in 2016. They've been working on this as a leading research firm for like 5 years before they had any success. And yes, there is a playbook now, but even with $2 billion in funding, I think it's very hard to play catch up against these massive companies that are going head to head, like OpenAI and all of the ones that already had a bunch of this tech and the systems in place. So you think of Google, X, Meta, like they already had massive companies and massive funding. So to start from scratch, even with $2 billion and all of the leading researchers, I do wonder how difficult that is going to be. And also to your point, how good are these people when they're not within the walls of what Sam has created at OpenAI? So I think it's a fascinating thing to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's like pulling someone out of a premiership sporting team, but then making him the captain of another team. So, like, how good were the Melbourne Storm players after they left a team with like Billy Slater and Cam Smith and Cooper Cronk? They're in the best leadership. They got the best leadership in the world in terms of structure, and then they went elsewhere. And could they deliver? So, it'd be really interesting to see if these non-CEO level people, these technical people, can lead an organization, or if they're backed by Andreessen Horowitz or they're backed by some other big VC firm. Are they just going to surround them with that leadership because they know that they're technical? That would be, I imagine, what the play is going to look like. But look, we'll keep a watch on that. One of my tools that actually, I think I was really early to, ElevenLabs, in terms of voice models. We were really early to it here, and then we bought a subscription as I always do, and then we put it in the innovation bin about 9 months ago. What I should have done was joined around instead of putting it in the innovation bin, because it's had like 3 rounds in 12 months and it's just quite, going 10 times order of magnitude every round. So, but they've got a new release, and they do seem to be, I think they're part of the Y Combinator, out of the Y Combinator school. So what can you tell us about what they're up to?
Yeah, so high level of ElevenLabs, as you mentioned, they do voice models. So they're on the cutting edge of being able to put text in and get a voice in any language or any accent or intonation to speak back to you. So I guess use cases would be things like, if you wanted to create a bunch of instructional videos for an onboarding or something, you can just get an AI agent to do the overdub. So heaps of use cases for the technology behind something like ElevenLabs. But typically what they've done is what I just mentioned, is voice to text. That's been their specialty. What they have released is conversational AI. So similar to, say, the ChatGPT chat mode. The interesting part about ElevenLabs' new announcement, which is 11.ai, the voice assistant, is not only do they have the world-leading voice capabilities now, but they've also plugged it in to all of the other tools that you'll be using via MCP, which if you don't know what MCP is, you'll have to go back to another episode where I do a massive deep dive on it. Maybe we can put that in the show notes. But MCP is the way of essentially connecting one AI tool to another AI tool. And so what they've essentially done, if you go to 11.ai, you can sign up, and it's got a voice assistant that you can try, and you can plug your tools in. So you might plug in your Google Calendar, plug in your email, plug in your Slack, and then you can start having a conversation with it. And I did try this morning. I confirmed it works. You can just ask, what's my agenda for today? What do I have on tomorrow? What should I be thinking about next week? What emails are important that I've missed? And you could do all this, say, in the car. So I think this concept is brilliant. It's not new. I think there's so many companies that are going to be working on this. Even ChatGPT has started plugging in your other tools via MCP. My prognosis of this one is they are not going to make much of a dent into the usage of ChatGPT, because they're not really adding heaps more. They've got a better voice model, arguably, and maybe they've got more tools connected in, but that will change. ChatGPT soon will be connected into every single tool that you have. That's just a fact. And even your enterprise tools. So our business, We use a CRM for our sales and marketing, and everything goes in there. It's called HubSpot. I'm sure plenty of people have heard of it. You can now plug HubSpot into ChatGPT, and rather than going and looking at reports of what's happening in your business, you can just ask ChatGPT. So that's where the future is going. It's really exciting to see another person or another company enter this space, but realistically, I'm going to put this in the category of get steamrolled by the OpenAI trend.
Steamrolled. Okay, well, I'm going to go with another word. The word for ElevenLabs and all these little Y Combinator startups is acquisition. I think that we're going to see ElevenLabs, Sesame. There's another one that I might as well just throw in now let's merge a couple of topics. There's another one called Workflow 86, which is helping people like me bridge the gap in terms of instead of going on N8N and having to like build out a workflow manually, which is probably just, I just don't have enough time to do. It's this design an automated workflow with voice. And it's probably running like Claude in the background to sort of do all the software engineering and coding to build out that automated workflow. So let's put them, because they're a Y Combinator company as well, pair them with ElevenLabs. And what I think we're seeing is VCs getting involved in some young tech for not much, trying to do one thing really well, which is an old saying, an old thought in Silicon Valley is just do one thing and do it really well. But my gut feeling is because OpenAI could kill everything, what they're probably going to try and do is just get acquired by someone. So the sell is going to be either to OpenAI, hey, we've got 50 people working full time on this one thing, and we've managed to make it, really good in this area. Just acquire us. You don't have to build it yourself. Just absorb us into your ecosystem, or if OpenAI start doing something and getting close to them, they go to everyone else and say to Google, say to Toyota, for instance, what if you want to talk to your car? Like, would they plug in ElevenLabs, or do they do the Zuck thing where you acquire it and then kill it for everyone else? So you keep it. So acquire and kill is like a thing that Zuck's done a fair bit at Facebook, so that only he has access to it, which is what he's just done with Alexander Wang, because Alexander Wang, his customers were OpenAI and Google and stuff beforehand. So I think there's going to be this sort of startup community of knowing that OpenAI could kill them, but initially trying to do something better than OpenAI and get acquired, or go to the whole rest of the competition and say, acquire us, plug us in, take us off the market. That's my little guess.
Yeah, no, I do like that. The thing I'd say is that to get acquired by OpenAI, you need to be working on the bleeding edge of technology. So which ElevenLabs is, which Scale AI was, but those companies are far and few between. You look at the YC batches, so let's say there's a couple hundred startups. I would argue that only probably less than 1% of them are working at the bleeding edge of technology. Most of them are just OpenAI wrappers anyway. So from OpenAI's perspective, and as we've talked about before, what the reasons why you would acquire someone, it's basically you're either acquiring the technology, you're acquiring the team, or you're acquiring the customers and the brand. And I think for most, say, YC startups, or not picking on YC, but basically any AI startups out there, a lot of them are just using fundamental technology. So you're not going to get acquired for your tech. You're probably not going to get acquired for your team because OpenAI has the best people anyway. And so really the only reason you would be getting acquired is if you can develop a whole lot of revenue, a whole lot of customers, a really good brand really quickly, and they acquire you either to crush you, like you just mentioned, like Zuck has been doing, or it's just it's easy revenue, it's easy brand. So you look at say Cursor, that's the AI coding tool that's going bananas. Their technology isn't that amazing. Again, they're just wrapping these other tools, but they've got a great brand and they're applying it really well, and they've got just a huge amount of a huge customer base, huge brand loyalty. You could see someone like them getting picked up for that brand, but I think there's a lot out there that are just going to get steamrolled, and not many people are going to buy them for very much. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, we can probably keep going on Y Combinator as well. I mean, they've had this big AI startup school. I don't know if it was a week or a couple of days, but you would have to say that they're at least doing their best to be the noisiest AI incubator and most successful in the world so far, but definitely the noisiest VC almost, as well as an incubator. And they're getting talent younger and younger. I think they've gone from targeting graduates to targeting high school graduates as well. And they managed to get all the heavy hitters to do keynotes at their recent AI startup. So they had Sam Altman of OpenAI, they had Satya Nadella of Microsoft, they had Elon Musk, they had Jensen Huang, my man, Aaron Levy of Box. So they had all the heavy hitters. One of the and so, some interesting things that I sort of took out of it was first Elon sort of saying that he was back on his whatever his gaming term is, like his main character mission, which is back to technology, like that the government was a side quest that didn't go so well. And then straight away Tesla stock's gone up like 20%. It's funny how these things react. But he sort of mentioned that he thinks that artificial superintelligence, digital superintelligence, is 12 to 24 months away, which I haven't heard anyone bring it that close. Spoke once again about life being multiplanetary, and just about, the robotics market again. So he sort of, I think, publicly announced his refocus. And when he focuses on something, things shift. And he actually said that he'd tried to actually be as sensitive as he can and slow himself down on robotics because he was worried about creating the Terminator. And then he said, but when Jensen put 10 robots on stage, he's like, well, you can either be watching the race or in the race. So now I'm all in. Oh, and then in the meantime, the head of robotics at Tesla's quit. So I think it's one of those ones where like Elon's probably left him alone for a couple of years and he's had all this like empowerment. And then like he comes in and goes, all right, I'm all in on robotics. And you just think, oh, this. Like I've got a family. I can't do 200 hours a week of work. What's exciting for us is what that means for probably humanoid robots. When the fact that he's turning his attention full time to it and to the Tesla machine, suddenly robo-taxis going in your city, Austin, which will be really cool when you get in your first one. And then all the other heavy hitters. So they have made enough noise to bring all the big players in. It's almost like, I almost think that like when you bring Sam Altman, Satya Nadella, Elon Musk, and Jensen Huang together, that's almost powerful than like these G7 summits where you bring like, the president of France here, because he's going to be gone in 2 years. Like these guys are changing the world and they're almost here permanently until they die. We can't vote them out. So yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts on all that?
I agree with that. It's like you think about the people who are changing the world right now. This summit or this startup school event had a lot of them, and I also think it's a bit of a they've got the brand, but as soon as you get a few big names on there, you can get the rest. So I was thinking, Scotty, that's maybe what we need to do with a guest appearance. Maybe we need to try and get a Satya Nadella or an Elon to spur on the snowball, and then we can get all of these guests like someone like Lex Friedman does. But no, I think that you're definitely right. You wouldn't want to go to, one of these big economic forums like Davos or something. You want to be going and listening to Y Combinator's startup school. You want to be just going on YouTube and listening to the announcements from these big companies that you're following. So, look, I totally agree there. It was pretty exciting to see some of the topics that they were all talking about.
Yeah, they're if you can stay across the major tech news, which is what we're trying to distill for everyone, you can then start to prepare for it, because one of the biggest ones to come out of it was I think it's Andre Karpathy, who's talking about software 3.0 and agents and what AI really means. He might have also said maybe like 2 years ago, before anyone listened, and I didn't really understand what he meant, but he said AI is like electricity. And I've been wondering, like, what is this, fourth industrial age we're going through, and how can I communicate it to people? And I thought he actually summed it up best 2 years ago. It is like electricity. Imagine what we have is a new resource that you can either be bulldozed over by or you can leverage. There are your only two options. But what you don't get to do is ignore the introduction of electricity. You don't get to ignore it. You either accept that you're going to be overrun by it, and that you're going to live in a house full of candles and run a candle business, or you can leverage electricity to get an advantage on your competitors who are slow to adapt electricity. So I just thought that was my biggest takeaway on it. And he actually said it 2 years ago, but when I heard his name come up, I'm like, why do I know that name? So yeah, it just gave me some clarity around also, you spoke about last week about carving out 20% of your time of tasks that you used to think were important, maybe pre-AI. What did I have to get involved in the business as a CEO, to tasks that's now important, which is actually what information diet do I have, and what do I need to do to be the tip of the spear for my team and make sure that we are leveraging this new electricity. So it cleared my mind that, like, this week I came to work after watching that on the weekend and going, I need 25% of my time focused on this. I can't keep leaving it to be the Paul cousin on the weekend, like it's some sort of side project. It's actually going to be at the core of what we do, and it's my job. And I'm probably looking now, I think we're going to start looking for a full-time position of this, like what you and I were talking about last week, which is like this AI tools researcher who also I want to look at every function in the business and figure out how it can be automated. So it's almost like inviting in a person to sort of really stir up the business while having like a thought of research, but also then some practicality. So by, the start of their week, they might be talking about tools. And then you might say by the end of the week, you have to have automated this process or improved it. And they just have this like feedback loop that just suddenly your business is getting more technologically advanced every week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea because there's only so much that leaders can do. I think spending the time to understand what's out there and to digest it and to be able to think from first principles about where the world is going is really important. And also spending the time to empower the team and giving them the freedom to use these tools and to think differently. But it shouldn't be up to the leaders of a business to be testing out all of the tools. Like, we do that because we like it and it's interesting, and this new world, and we don't want to stay too far. We want to keep close to it. But I think that's a really good idea, to actually have a role designated to trialing different tools and staying ahead of the curve. And that's potentially something where it would be self-fulfilling, in the fact that as soon as you got somebody in to focus on that, the first thing they're probably going to do is they're going to look at, how can agents help me with this? And then the agents are out there looking for new tools and analyzing them. And it's like, so it's this feedback loop that once you get this started, your competitive advantage can get greater and greater because you're using more of these tools, and you start accelerating. You get that momentum. You're moving in a certain direction faster than your competitors. And this is, as we've talked about, this is all going to flatten out and converge. Basically, in 12 months' time or 24 months' time, if you haven't heavily integrated AI and tools into your workflows, it's not like you will just be a little bit behind or you're not progressive. You will literally be like the Amish. You will be like in a different era. And so I think this has to happen, but the time is now to move really, really fast. And I think that sense of getting ahead, you can accelerate that. So that's why there's such a race to do this, and why we're so passionate about doing this now and not just sort of thinking about and dipping our toes into the water, because the advantages to be had from AI it's this timing thing. It's really like, you can get the most advantage out of AI yesterday, the second most advantage is today, and then everything else, it's getting diminished. So I think that's a really good idea, to get someone in full time to be looking at the different tools and how you can be streamlining and orchestrating every process in your business.
Yeah, and I think the ROIC is going to be revenue per head, which, personally, I remember talking about on another podcast 2 or 3 years ago, was the number one guiding light for me in business. And And yeah, you think whatever that salary is, if they make you 10% more efficient, or all the people in your business 10% more efficient, what's that worth? It's going to be really obvious. You're going to be able to set a dashboard up, and you might end up having a team of them eventually. Let's switch gears here. I want to know, are we starting to reward cheating? Because clearly, a bit of a viral sensation, young guy cheated on his way to get into Stanford or one of the big universities on either his first test or on the test to get in. Got caught. He built himself some software to cheat, to get past all of the detectors. And now he's been propped up by A16Z. And one of the interesting things I found interesting when listening to an interview, because he's gone quite viral, is he has two roles in his business. One is AI engineers that are a bit edgy because they want to be part of helping people sort of cheat and help people like they're looking at their ad is like a guy who's on a date wearing clear glasses, and it's downloading the content of the person he's talking to and giving him talking points. And it's sort of like, you can fake your way through any date or conversation. So he's got that. He's got AI engineers, and the only other people he hires apart from AI engineers are viral influencers. And the mix is about half. So he's like, you either have 100,000 followers and you're on the cutting edge of virality, or you're on the cutting edge of software engineering using AI. And now he's been backed by one of the most successful venture capital firms, or, consolidated firms in the world. So this is a solidification of what would usually be an edge case.
Yeah. And I have a hot take here. I don't think this business has anything to do with cheating. That was a story that they came up with. Like it happened. This guy was trying to cheat, and he's smart. He understands social media. I've seen a podcast with him as well. I don't know if it was the same one or not. I only watched some of it. But the thing that stood out to me was he was talking about the types of things that you have to do on certain social media channels. So he actually said that X is 2 years behind in its virality radar, or its sense of humor, or the things that you need to do to get picked up and to get traction is 2 years behind where TikTok and Instagram are at. And he was saying that to get any traction on TikTok and Instagram, you need to do this crazy stuff. So all he's doing is he's applying techniques that would have made you go viral on TikTok to X. And it seems really new. People are like shocked about these videos they're creating where they talk about cheating. So I actually don't think it's got anything to do with cheating. When you think about what the business is doing, it's very similar to some of the concepts we have been talking about this background passive AI, helping you make decisions, helping you just get through life with AI. That's probably the market that they're playing in. Just like, this thinking machines business that's been funded that we talked about earlier by A16Z. A16Z is trying to think about the new way of work. It's trying to fund these businesses that have a different approach. And something like Clearly, they're using the fact that cheat on everything is a good motto that's not very politically correct, and that therefore they're going viral. And A16Z has probably said these guys know they get virality. They've got good engineers, they've got good technology, and the mission is strong. Who cares if they've got this somewhat unpolitically correct topic? It's only going to get them more virality. So it does make me think, Scotty, about what are ridiculous things we need to be doing to get this show off the ground.
Maybe we need you in like some Speedos on that beach.
But, don't tempt me. Don't tempt me.
But yeah, look, I think one of the things that I think what they're solving for two things is they obviously feel like they've got intelligence, which is a key marker to creating a good product, and then they're trying to solve for the second thing, which is quite difficult, is distribution. So there's a lot of good founders out there who have solved for intelligence and maybe have created a good product and have just failed at the distribution level, or what some people might call product market fit. But if you're building an audience that's millions, by the time you've got the product right, then you're directly into distribution straight away. So It's basically a platform, a viral platform that's getting audience capture, so that whenever they do something, we don't release that product, it's going to have eyeballs, and it's going to have
Yep.
users straight away.
Yep, totally. And I think just on that as well, just to wrap it up, one trend that I'm noticing is much higher production video content. I think that you've got your different types of content. You've got your quick, authentic selfie videos that you can just sort of do with no post-production. You get it out there onto even like LinkedIn or TikTok, and that can do well. But then you put down the other end of the spectrum, really high quality stuff like the advertising that we saw from the OpenAI and Johnny Ive collaboration, really high quality stuff. I think that is what's going to be required to cut through on the other end of the spectrum. So the concept of having big teams of content creators is really fascinating. And then also the question of where does AI come in here? I don't know what your X feeds look like, but mine is just littered at the moment with AI videos of like cats jumping off diving boards. And I think that kind of stuff is probably going to be a passing fad. But the high quality content is what I think is here to stay. And it does make me think about, like, have we got our business structured in the right way? We've got 40 staff and one of them is focused on full-time content production. Should that be 5 people? I don't know. So it's interesting to hear how Clearly have structured their business.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're talking more about distribution though, not just content production, right? So I think it's more about growth than the content itself. So it's that growth. Like, is marketing a growth position, a growth manager, or is marketing a storyteller? So potentially you need both. The exact makeup, I'm not sure, but they're not the same thing. A lot of businesses think that they're the same thing, the growth and marketing and like kind of and content. But this is a new world. You don't just like purchase for 5 million a Super Bowl ad, I think, anymore. And I think that combination of AI content and human content, I think there'll be both. I think it'll merge into sort of a singularity of sorts where, like we've spoken about, you will create content that then will be customized to every one of your followers in the long run. The other thing, OpenAI have started their own podcast. Every major VC firm now has a podcast. So it is the era of podcasts. And I think we'll see a lot more businesses realizing that they have to be having more conversations with the community and building trust to their network and future customers. So, luckily we've already got one. Let's dive into the robot rundown or physical AI, where the rubber meets the road in technology. And do we have a thanks for watching in the robot rundown?
We do. So official thanks for watching to Masa, Mr. Masayoshi Son, who is the founder and a CEO or chairman of SoftBank, one of the largest financial firms in the world. Mr. Masa, has pitched a $1 trillion AI and robotics hub in Arizona. So they're collaborating with the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, and they're essentially pitching a huge hub in the US, in Arizona, that's purely focused on AI and robotics. So think of sort of the Silicon Valley, but with hardware and AI and robotics. And it specifically says in the article that I read, this project aims to replicate China's Shenzhen manufacturing hub, bringing high-tech production back to the US. That sounds very familiar, Scotty, to an idea that you teased out in our last episode around what Australia should be doing and creating our own version of Shenzhen. So I think it's a big thanks for watching. Obviously, Masa got an early tip on what we're going to talk about and managed to get this out before we could get a chance to properly distribute it. But what's your thoughts on this one? And maybe good to get your take, because we didn't get into it fully, on the idea for a Shenzhen in Australia.
Well, look, first, definitely Masayoshi-san, thanks for watching. But look, if we're, I think there's a few more things I suppose we've got in the robot rundown. I think we might park this bigger thought, this bigger rant on my coming back from Shenzhen, or coming back from Dubai, your things in America, and just what we're thinking about Australia and our opportunity here. We will
Sounds good.
I want to deep dive on that. So let's close out the robot rundown. I think that's a great idea of theirs. So he's talking about $1 trillion of AI and robotics hub in Arizona. You can activate these spaces if you're going to build an AI and robotics hub. It doesn't have to be in the most polished, metropolitan city in the world. It can be sort of almost in the middle of nowhere, as long as you can, get resources there. But just anything else. I mean, for me, Tesla, as part of the robot rundown, the robot taxi had the successful launch. There's one guy who's had over 20 rides in 36 hours, and none of them had interventions. So I would say that's virtually a Waymo killer, which we spoke about last week. But also at the same time, I'm hearing about Waymo doing deals with Toyota and other companies where they're actually now licensing their software. So I suppose Tesla's making a bet on, you're either going to buy one of their cars and own them and keep it to yourself. You're either going to buy one of their cars and lease them back to the community to pay for them, or you're not going to own a car and you're going to use Tesla robo-taxis to get around. So Tesla's covered the full sway of opportunities that we have for logistics and travel. And Waymo are going, we're in trouble here. How can we get some other revenue? Because we haven't built this thing from the ground up. We're sitting on top of Jaguars or whatever they are. And they're saying, okay, we still have all this intelligence. We still have this great software. We still have great hardware bolted onto our cars. What's another revenue stream?
Yeah. And it does seem like the right strategy is to go out, and if you're not vertically integrated, figure out how many other cars can you get your tech onto or into, rather than trying to do the Tesla approach and going and building your own cars and competing there, because it's probably a losing battle. And, as we've talked about, the Tesla robo-taxis, they've got the economic advantage as well. Elon's made the decision that he hasn't used LiDAR on it, even though all of his engineers wanted him to reconsider. It just uses cameras. I guess it's still yet to be seen whether or not that's the right strategy to see if the robotaxi launch is truly successful. It looks like it's going to be. But if that's the case, think about the costs that he has saved by not putting LiDAR onto these cars. One, they don't look silly. And two, they can be done much more economically. So I think that the robo-taxis could be a Waymo killer, but if I was sitting there at the helm of Waymo, I would be doing exactly what they're doing and figuring out how can we partner with all the other manufacturers that are also worried about Tesla killing their business.
Yeah. And I mean, in general, in robots, I suppose there's so much robot news this week. It's actually, we could sit here for another 2 hours and go company by company, but we've got, NVIDIA, Figure AI have massive announcements. Hugging Face are building open source models for robots. Google have a on the edge robot that they're just releasing. And our man at Figure, what I'm finding really cool about, because I am worried about Figure in general, because I think Tesla is just going to dominate the robot space as well due to manufacturing prowess, because robots can have all the intelligence they want, but if you've got foundational models built out of XAI and you've got hardware and manufacturing capacity built out of Tesla, that's a hard beat for the humanoid robot. But let's say there's enough space. Let's say the economy is big enough for all the major players to get involved, and they can all sort of sit on top of NVIDIA or Google type software. And I like that Figure has built everything from the ground up. So they're using their own models, they're using their own controls, they're using their own hardware. It's daunting, but I think they're playing that Tesla long game of saying we don't want to be Waymo with a bunch of gadgets bolted on from other companies to, and coddling together as a product. So I think I respect and admire Brad Cock for doing that. And the other thing I really respect and admire about him is in every week he does sort of what's the AI and robotics news. And on the robotics front, he's celebrating all of his competitors and he's saying it's sort of like, the tide rises all boats. And I think it's this new thing that we're seeing amongst CEOs of the biggest companies in the world, like we just saw at the AI startup school, is these people are all meant to be competing, like in the most competitive market in the world. But what you see when there's a bit of not a bubble, but there's a bit of like you've got the biggest tailwinds potentially of all time, is that everyone's doing so well that they're happy to celebrate each other. Like Figure's got barely any revenue and they got a multi-billion-dollar valuation. So he's just sort of a happy CEO celebrating his competitors. But I suppose one, do you want to deep dive into any of the singular companies doing things? Or two, what are your thoughts on just 2025 feels like the year of the agent, 2026 feels like the year of the robot. And then three, just on these CEOs not feeling like they're in deep competition, but almost celebrating each other's work and appearing at the same conferences.
Yeah, look, I think the only one that I would deep dive on that I thought was really interesting was a company that you mentioned called Hugging Face. So, and I'll be quick on this one because I know we've got a bit to get through still, but Hugging Face is a company that hosts open source AI models. So if you want to go and get an open source model, you can go to Hugging Face, you can download them, you can run them on there as well. They've got their own infrastructure. So not just the training of the models and the data sets they have there, but also what you'd call the inference. So the ability to query these models and you can run that. So they make their money, a lot of it's open source and free, but they make their money from big enterprises who then go and use that and use all their infrastructure. And if, to your point, if 2025 or 2026 wasn't the year of the robot, it certainly is now when we see an open source AI company that specializes in software doing robot acquisitions. So they, in April, acquired a company called Pollen Robotics, and that allowed them to get these models onto robots in an open source way. And so think about it. Not only do you have these big companies like Tesla and Figure funding these humanoid robots, you've now got these companies that are focused on open source AI also investing in the space. And the tagline that jumped out at me about Hugging Face, you can now get an open source humanoid robot that costs less than a MacBook. Like, let that sink in for a while. You can get a whole humanoid robot running AI models for less than what we're currently doing our podcast on. So is there a world where I could be sitting on Noosa Beach here, instead of running the podcast through my MacBook, I'm just talking to my little Hugging Face robot who's doing it all for me? Like, it sounds crazy, but that this is actually a thing. And so that's probably something that I wanted to call out from the robotics news. I think the general theme of humanoids is just so massive. We've talked about the market cap here and the potential opportunity. I ran some numbers through ChatGPT's O3 Pro, which is really good at reasoning. And by a lot of estimates, the humanoid robot opportunity from a total market cap and a total potential valuation perspective is 8 times bigger than the whole of the software as a service market by year 2050. So this space is not going to go anywhere. I think we're going to see more and more businesses getting into the physical space, and this part of the pod is probably only going to get bigger and bigger. Maybe we'll have to do a whole separate side shoot of the pod just for robots and physical AI.
Yeah, it's I saw some ex software engineer during the week start like a manufacturing business. And he said, like, left Silicon Valley, moved to Ohio, bought a factory, bought a machine, started using robotics, and he's like, software's for pussies. Like, it was just this, it's like this revolution of like these, we talk about the term builder. He's like, we can actually physically build things.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree. Look, there's going to be more robots than humans. So get your head around that. There's currently no humanoid robot in the home. Your prediction was that there will be by in 2025. I think you've done pretty well there. But there is going to be more than 8 billion of them. So whatever that market is, if some of them are the price of a MacBook, that means that they're a few grand. So you go 8 billion times 3,000, that gives you 24 trillion. Some of them are going to be $50,000. And you do the number there and you start to get into the hundreds of trillions. So the robot economy is going to be bigger than the current entire economy. So that's why we're talking about it. It's in its infancy stages, but we're not going to stop talking about it because it's probably the greatest use of AI. So therefore, or the most practical use. So therefore, we spoke about AI's electricity, then therefore this is the physical element of it. So we'll keep a close watch there. And the Robot Rundown's been going for 12 episodes or 13 episodes in a row. So hopefully we're keeping slightly ahead of the game on our competition there. And we're both looking forward to our first humanoid.
Oh, yeah.
Mate, I want to get into Tool of the Week. And this week we've got a really approachable one. So sometimes if they're a bit dense for you, this week is not this week. This is as practical as a humanoid robot. So I want to kick it off for the everyday person. And mine is the home screen of your iPhone. So here's mine for those at home or wherever they are, whether you're at the gym. And what I did this week, and it took me like embarrassingly an hour, was I checked my usage of apps. And then I realized I've been scrambling because I have, I think, 6 or 7 or maybe 8, 9, I've got 10 screens on my iPhone, which means that I've got over 200 apps. But you've got 28 that you can give to your home screen. You've got 7 rows. And I'm sure this is not too dissimilar on an Android. And you've also got the 4 at the bottom. Now, these for me are communication tools, things that if you don't want to miss a notification, I believe they need to be on your home screen so that when it comes up, it notifies you and you see it. Because if you have to scroll through 3 screens, like for instance, this podcast uses Slack, it's the only thing in my life that uses Slack. So I find myself like, oh shit, I should have looked at that 2 days later. So I've brought Slack in for you to the front. But I've put our W app in my bottom row. I've got my calls. I've now that I'm a China expert, self-proclaimed, I've got my WeChat in there because we've got our supply chain there. I've got my WhatsApp, my socials, and my key AI tools. So ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok X, and Limitless, plus some podcasts and photos. So I just think if you haven't rearranged your phone and you're still scrolling through all your different screens to get to that tool that you actually use 3 times a day, it's almost like doing a spring clean of your wardrobe or your home. You just feel better afterwards. You feel organized, and you might throw out some old pairs of shoes. And I've just found that the last few days since I've done it, I'm not missing as much. And when I miss things, I get stressed. Like, shit, I haven't responded to that for 2 days. And you're usually much better at this stuff than me. So have you done something similar, or have you got an example of the same, or what's on your screen?
Yeah, interestingly, I have, and I totally agree with the idea that having this stuff organized is really helpful. Like, there's actually, I forget which hormone or whatever it is in the body that does it, but there's some scientific research behind this. In organizing your life, especially things like your home screen, can actually make you feel better. So I definitely recommend everyone doing this. I have an idea, and this is the way I've structured mine, and I'd recommend people considering this. I've got my home screen with all of my main apps that I use. I'll bring it up in a second. Then on the second screen, I have committed that all of the real estate just to AI apps. And the reason for that is I'm trying to trigger a reset in the way that I operate. So I felt by having all of my AI apps on one screen that was just next to the main one, rather than just having ChatGPT on my home screen, which was my go-to, I'll actually be encouraged to use the other apps and to think of all the different ways that I could be applying my AI tools when I'm about to go and do something, a different task. And then I've got a third screen just like as a bit of a dumping ground for a few apps that get downloaded. But what I do is I go and remove any apps that don't get used much from my home screen. You can keep them as apps downloaded on your phone, but you remove them from your home screen. So basically what I've got is I've got my home page, which is here. I'll bring that one up in case anyone's interested. But like you, Scotty, I've got the main things that notify me. So I can see them. I've got my communication tools, my email, my Slack, a few of my main social media apps, which is mainly LinkedIn and X, and regular things like my Google Maps and my Apple Wallet that you need every day. Then the next screen, my AI screen, is I've got all of the usual suspects on there. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, Notebook LM, Perplexity, Manus, and DeepSeek. We've got Meta AI on there now, a couple that people may not have heard of. We've got Replit, which is what you can use to build apps from your phone. I've got one called Raycast that I haven't used heaps. I use it on my laptop a bit, but it's a way of quickly getting stuff done, quick links, snippets of text, quick voice notes. That's quite a cool app. My Granola, which my meeting note taker, Super Whisper, which is my ability to quickly use an AI model to transcribe my voice to text within any app. And then I've just downloaded the ElevenLabs app as well. So I've got that on my AI home screen. I am looking for more suggestions for apps to put on there. So definitely app me if you've got them. Then the third screen is just a bit of a dumping ground. But then if you scroll across to the final screen, you get your app library anyway. So that's why I would definitely recommend just deleting everything that you don't use. You don't need that 10 pages of screens. I would cut it back down to 2 or 3 is my tip for our high-level tool of the week this week.
Mate, I love that. So let's say we've got a notification dashboard as our home screen and our high usage apps that we want to see anytime something comes up. We want it to be in our face. So we're going to call that our dashboard. 2, we're going to have our AI tools screen. And 3, in 2026 and beyond, we're going to have our robot screen. And that's going to be managing all of our robots. Look, and the good thing about that, that's going to be a really messy screen unless you've partnered with Elysium, in which you'll have the all-in-one robotics app, where we will bring all of your home robots together into one pretty little bit of real estate at the top of your page. So, mate, I think that's a really good takeaway for Tool of the Week. Everyone can learn from that. I'm going to, you've shamed me again. I've advanced myself from a caveman to a digital guru, and now you've added the AI screen, which I didn't have. So I will take that at the end of the show, create my AI page, and have all my tools there. So thank you for that. And
Anytime.
mate, to finish off, we like to finish the show after all this tech talk with a bit of parting wisdom and maybe a bit of philosophy and maybe something that brings or a new idea or invokes some positivity or some opportunity or blue sky that we've been thinking about personally. And last week we spoke about potentially the virtues and possibilities in Australia and some of the things that are holding us back, and maybe a big broad new idea which we actually teased but didn't dive into. So what I want to do to set the foundation of this, because you and I have been talking about it a lot, we've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm wondering whether we can bring together our 2 ideas here and really end on a consolidated vision. Now, whether anyone sees that vision or not is not up to us, but you and I can at least agree on a way forward. So just to lay the foundation, I've spent a fair bit of time in some really up and coming areas that were previously only as old as you and I 30-40 years ago, deserts or fishing villages or nothing, and you spent a lot of time in the US recently, so why don't we start with you around what you're seeing in Australian politics at the moment, maybe some media takes or stuff that you've seen to lay the foundation, and also what you're seeing overseas, and what's the difference between what you'd want to see and what you are seeing at the moment?
Yeah, I'm keen to cover up a couple of things. One is probably a little bit of a frustration with some Australian politics, especially in relation to energy. So we've talked about this before, but the thing that kind of brought this to attention for me more recently was a video I saw from Robert Bryce, who is an author and a film producer, actually criticizing Australia's energy policy. And some things that really stood out was him calling us an energy superpower that's acting like an energy weakling. And what he means by this is We have a lot of natural resources. We've got a lot of uranium, got a lot of coal. We are shipping out 7 times more coal than we use. And yes, we have a strategy of reducing our emissions, which is important. But also, how much of that is just political virtue signaling? Because if we're willing to just ship all of this coal off to, say, China to burn it there just to reduce our emissions, is that really doing the world any better? Like, if you really cared about that, you should just stop shipping the coal at all, start to be digging out of the ground. And so we're not helping the world. We're doing this virtue signaling, and we're also hurting our own economy. Australians are going to be paying up to 10% more from July 1st, as the Australian Energy Regulator has approved the fact that the default market offer, basically what the energy suppliers can increase their prices to, of up to 9.7%. So we could all be paying up to 10% more for energy because of what I would say is bad policy. And you look at all the advancements with other technologies, while wind and solar are important. You look at something like nuclear, there are much safer ways of doing nuclear now. And we have policies banning us from doing nuclear because of, seeing movies on things like Chernobyl, which just isn't realistic anymore. And so why would we not be leveraging the fact that we have 30% of the world's uranium supply and building nuclear plants in Australia? We've got so much space. And then doing some of the strategies that you've mentioned before around building data centers here, powering them, getting the big companies here, turning Australia into a superpower and actually making us more prosperous as a nation. So look, that's sort of my hot take, or not even a hot take. I think it's probably going to become a bit more mainstream on Australia's energy policy. And I will talk about a few things that I'm seeing in America as separate to this, but I don't know, did you have anything to weigh in on that?
Yeah, what you touched on, and we've spoken about here a couple of times, is that we have all the resources that are critical to creating abundant energy, almost free and abundant energy. And we're currently exporting them. So what we're doing is we're giving them to China and other places in the world and Japan, who are then using them to create cheap energy. And then they're winning the race on technology, and their GDP growth is going up and to the right, and their life expectancy is going up and to the right, and ours is declining or flatlining, and then we're not leveraging them ourselves. So not only are we virtue signaling, we're giving these things away, and we're helping other nations thrive. So even if even if we wanted to virtue signal and not contribute to global warming or something, we're just not benefiting from it. So we're putting a handbrake on ourselves for accelerating the rest of the world. So that's really frustrating. We have the coal, uranium, the natural gas is the other one. And the other thing we have is solar. And what China has done so well is they build coal plants, coal-powered energy. They have the biggest solar array in the world. And soon China's solar capacity is going to be bigger than the whole of the US's power capacity. Have a think about that, let alone Australia. So China have figured out that energy is the core of everything. Now, we have more resources than China. The only thing they have on us is people, right? People don't create energy. So we could be the absolute energy powerhouse of the Earth. And if you are the energy powerhouse, you can be the compute powerhouse. And therefore, that's where it all starts. So I completely agree with you there. And then, so if we just park the energy talk, or else I might explode. We can move on now to, I suppose, what still lingers in things that government have an influence on, which is technology, innovation, regulation, and taxes. I've spent a lot of time, not a lot of time, but time over the last few years doing a lot of travel. I've spent a lot of time in the US. I spent a lot of time in places like transition cities and up-and-coming cities like Dubai, more recently Hong Kong, Shenzhen, and then places like San Francisco that have been innovating for a while. And you've spent a heap of time in San Fran and more recently Austin. For me, the one consistent thing I feel like I'm seeing in these places that are thriving and have come from nothing. These are not like resource dense areas that are built on the back of resource like we've seen, that's actually a huge tailwind that we have that we're not using. These places don't even like necessarily 100% need them to thrive. Somewhere like Dubai, it helps. But what we're seeing is places like Hong Kong that was basically created out of lowering taxes and becoming and lowering regulation and just becoming this economic powerhouse of a little city, which basically became a country, and this great mix of Eastern and Western culture, and really the center of the Asia Pacific of doing business. We have seen Dubai raised out of the sand, and and now being in one of the frontier countries, it's frontier cities of AI itself, and trying to get off oil and get onto energy and compute. San Francisco's been the innovation hub forever. And now you're going to Austin, which you can talk to. And we've just talked about the robo-taxi being there and all this tech moving to there. They're leaving California and going to Austin. And it just makes me think of what could we do here in Australia and where could it be? And all we have to do is have one state maybe stand up and one city even stand up and have the federal government support of having an isolated zone of innovation, energy, and economic activity that's built on intelligence, people who are trying grand things, R&D, have some support, have some government support if you want, but basically getting out of the way. That's pretty much it. I feel like the answer is get out of the way and support where you need to. And if you're too scared to do that across an entire country, or there's too much politics, then do we have the opportunity to do it in a small area, like for instance, a Darwin or a Geelong, or one of these sort of cities just outside of Sydney, where it's not one of the main centerpiece cities of Australia. It's somewhere new. So I suppose, what can you add to that? Do you agree with it first? And two, what can you add to it from your travels? What have you learned from traveling around the world?
Yeah. Look, I think I hadn't considered it before, but the idea of someone like a Darwin with access to ports and like quick trade with China, especially from an AI and robotics perspective, could be really interesting. It's nice and hot up there, so we don't have to manage that. But so are a lot of places in the world. Look, I'm totally in agreement. I think creating this hub where the free market can decide on what happens, getting out of the way of innovation, but also we do need better political leadership here. That's one of the reasons that, say, China has been able to create these cities, is because they don't have any pushback. When they want to do something, they can just do it. So look, I agree that there needs to be good economic leadership here. The government needs to get out of the way of the free market so that we can do something like this. And putting it in a remote part of Australia could be really interesting. Putting it near where we could have these data centers, where we could have energy being produced, could be awesome. And I mean, to your point about what have I learned, I think one thing that I want to touch on, and it's not necessarily tied to politics or this particular idea, but I do want to quickly touch on some differences that I've noticed around doing business in America compared to doing business in Australia. And probably the most noticeable one is the tall poppy syndrome that we have here in Australia, being where there's a tall poppy that stands out, someone being successful or someone being bold and ambitious, often you find yourself getting cut down because we have this very egalitarian society where sort of everyone should be equal. And that's different to America in the sense that Americans are happy to bring each other up. They actually reward success. They think that being ambitious is a really good thing, and they bring each other up. So that's one thing that I think that we need to get better at in Australia, is get rid of this tall poppy syndrome. It's not to say that you can't have humility, but I think we need to get rid of that idea of chopping down other people when they're being successful. The second point is, I've noticed that face-to-face relationships are still really important in America, whereas I don't feel the same way in Australia anymore. I feel like most of the time people just want to take a Zoom meeting. They don't want to go out and meet someone and shake their hand and look them in the eye. And that's generalizing, but I think especially in the world of AI, we need to get back to traveling to someone's home city, meeting them, going out and eating local food with them, looking them in the eye, shaking them hand, breaking some bread, sharing some wine, because that's the things that make us human. So that's another thing that I think America does really well, and that we've maybe lost a bit of. And then probably thirdly is just this general optimism about life and about doing business. I was at a conference recently in Houston, and what I noticed was the people that visited our booth were actually selling back to me. I would start my pitch and they'd be like, wait, hold up. So you're telling me that your software is going to make me more efficient. I'm going to spend less time out on site. And they were just like, they pitched it back to me. I'm like, this is incredible. Like, there's just so much optimism about doing business here. And you can see why this country has been so successful. So it's not specifically on the topic of creating this hub for AI and robotics, but more of a general like cultural difference I've noticed that Australia can really learn a lot from.
Yeah, I think especially in Victoria, there's been a loss of trust and a back step back to so what you're saying, like around technology, people are like, oh yeah, but can we trust the technology and all that kind of stuff. It's our first skeptical approach. And then also, yeah, we got forced into our homes for 250 days and we were told we weren't allowed to go anywhere. So then we built habits around sitting in offices and having meetings. So I completely agree with you. I mean, I sort of do probably too much travel, but I get so much out of that face-to-face connection. I could never do an online uni degree. I actually tried when I was like 19, and after like 3 classes, I was like, oh, I actually have to physically go. And I like to go around the world and learn at great institutions and meet great people, and expand my network. And I get to speak to those people from around the world all the time. But you have to make the effort to then go and see them. And you have to be able to, when you travel to meet people, you have to be able to arrange your time. And that's really hard for a lot of people. It's a lot easier for people to work from home, sit at home and just book in meetings all day and then take their dog for a walk and go to the bank and have a coffee at the local coffee shop and then just stay in their little bubble. It's much harder to go to work, not only do that, meet with people face to face, then book in travel to go overseas and meet with new people and expand your network and expand your horizons and learn. That is so much harder. It takes so much more effort. So I think there's an effort thing there. Americans have a really hardworking culture. They'll do the 12-hour days because they look up to the billionaires and the people who have succeeded as frontiers of success and people to look up to. And in Australia, we chop them down. Like who's a fan of like Gina Reinhardt or Kerry Packer or, they're all just people that have stolen from us, as opposed to like, oh, look at the success stories or Twiggy. Even the guys from Atlassian are now copying flack because they got a jet. Like the guy got a jet, leave him alone. He's worth like $100 billion. Leave him alone. Let him have a jet. If he needs to travel, he's probably got kids. If he wants to like run a global business that's dominating and sees family, he probably needs to be able to have a jet on command, right? If he's going to do those two things. So yeah, I agree with you. There's just an attitude that needs to change here. We need to just wake up and realize what we have. And I think maybe it leads back to like what we're talking about. If there was less regulation and red tape and more opportunity and more leveraging our resources and more abundance, perhaps we would open up a bit because we've got that base layer where, we're not spending our whole income on our mortgage. Potentially then you might see us flower.
I like it. Epic. That's some good partying wisdom, Scotty.
Look, mate, is there anything else you want to go through or should we wrap it up there?
Happy to wrap it there. I should probably get back to the lizard boy and enjoy the sun that's coming out.
All right, mate. Well, get in your togs. Get some happy snaps for the show notes and for our producer to share with the show and enjoy Noosa and look after your son.
Thanks, Scotty. See you, mate.
See you, mate. Bye.